Hi, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Abilene People. This is the podcast where we talk to the most interesting people in Abilene about the most interesting things. And today we have my doctor, Dr. Tim Martin. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, glad you came.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Today we're going to talk about my health history. We're going to get into all the details of everything that's wrong with me. There's a lot of mental health kind of stuff.
As long as you're volunteering it, you can say whatever you want.
Nothing could be further from the truth. But we are going to talk about something that I do have some personal history with, and largely because of your influence. We're going to talk about GLP-1 meds, what they are and what they do. And let's just start there. Give us for somebody that might not really understand what a GLP-1 is, and they hear that, well, what is that? What are those medications? What are those drugs, and what are they good for?
GLP-1s they were discovered in the 1980s, and it wasn't until someone doing parallel research, interestingly enough, into Gila monster saliva, realized that the Gila monsters have a similar type peptide in their saliva, and they isolated it and discovered that it really worked for diabetes. And that was the initial use of GLP-1 medications. I've been using them since Victoza came out, so I've got, over a decade worth of experience using GLP-1s with diabetics. And there's been 6 or 8 of the molecule, and we can talk about the brand name versus the molecule, but they've been around for quite a while, and they're primarily a treatment for diabetes. And the longer we have them, the more we learn about what they can do for humans.
And one of the things that they can do is address weight loss, obesity. That's certainly my experience. I've lost about 100 pounds. I've gained some back, and now I'm about 75 to 77 pounds lighter than I was at my heaviest.
Yeah, that's an excellent response.
And what it taught me was, I'm ashamed to say, as an adult male, it taught me how to look at food, how to think of food. And when I was hungry, it taught me not to overeat. That's what the drugs taught me. That's my experience. Is that a pretty common experience?
That is one of the number one things people tell me is they say, I just no longer have this overwhelming urge to eat. Or they'll say something like, now I have enough time to choose better what I eat.
Yeah, and that's so strange. I totally resonate with what you just said, and I've never put it that way, but I get that. And why? How? How do these, from Gila monster saliva, and peptides and diabetes control to this? How do we get from there to here?
Well, here's the beautiful thing about the Gila monster saliva. Nature is incredibly efficient, and it uses the same pattern in many different ways. And so this peptide's been sitting around. I mean, it's in our body. Our body uses it every day. We just hadn't ever isolated it from humans. But once we discovered it in another species, then there was more of an impetus to figure out how it really worked. The primary, the organ system that we were trying to target was the gut, right? The stomach, the intestines, the liver, and pancreas. Those are all the organs really involved in diabetes. But as we've used the GLP-1s more and more, we've learned that the brain is also a target for them. And having less GLP-1 in your system leaves you more open to hunger and feeling like you're starving. The feelings in your gut you get, the churning, the uncomfortableness, sometimes the nausea, and this craving in your brain that I've got to have something. Hangry, ravenous, all those kind of terms all humans are used to experiencing. It used to be back when famine and hunger were much more common that we all experienced them more often and we knew exactly what they were tied to. But nowadays, especially in American settings, there's really not as much hunger. Not that there's none, but there's a lot less than there used to be. And so we don't actually experience starvation. but we experience the cravings for food, and I just got to get something in me, and we're reaching for the convenience type things. I talk to people a lot who tell me they get up at 2:00 in the morning for a bowl of cereal, and I ask them why, and they say, "'Cause I'm hungry." And we've somehow believe that if we're hungry, then we have to feed it. And then we believe if we're hungry, we have to feed it what our brain is targeting, cereal or bread. And our brain tends to target carbohydrates more.
I was going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I want to jump in and say that, boy, that's my experience because carb addict my whole life. And once and it took some time, became more acquainted with what the GLP-1s were doing inside me and in my brain, I don't really crave the carbs anymore. I don't even want bread. And I can't believe that I said that. Cookies, cake, no, have no interest.
And you probably tried many different techniques over the years to curb those. You may have done massive nutritional changes, like gone to a keto type diet. You may have gone to schedules or reminder type situations. You may have tried denying yourself. And every single time you come right back around to the sugars and the carbohydrates. But what we've noticed, and there was an article in the New York Times just last week about this, the people who get on the GLP-1 successfully and stay on it, these symptoms tend to go away.
Yeah. Was there a singular moment you remember when the link to potential benefits for weight loss were being made, and you were reading material as a doctor? And was there something where you said, aha, I really am going to buy into this?
It was my experience treating people. So first, in the early 2000s, I was part of I don't want to call it marketing, but it was definitely a survey system. I took it was almost an hour long, and it was projecting how diabetes treatment was likely to change. And I was aware that the FDA had some programs. They were testing some things, didn't really know much about them. But I could tell from the way the questions were asked that something was on the horizon. So I was already medically kind of prepped to be paying attention. And then when medicines like Byetta and Victoza first came out, they were actually pretty difficult for patients. It was everyday injections and unpleasant side effects like nausea. And the people who stuck with it and were able to stay on it, they got fabulous blood sugar control. And it was just, for the first time ever, and I was trained at UT Southwestern, where we had some of the best endocrinologists in the country. And I mean, I never really noticed tremendous benefits for people other than we were able to keep them alive longer. They still had terrible diabetes. They still suffered tremendously, and it was very difficult to control. And all of a sudden, we could get people's A1Cs down. And that's when I first started noticing that people were much more able to stick to the nutritional recommendations I was making, because I've always believed that nutrition management was a cornerstone of diabetes treatment. That was my first clue. It wasn't until Ozempic came along and it was just once a week and the side effects were much less, that we saw, again, fabulous diabetes control to the point where, I was calling it a miracle drug. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But then the weight was melting off. And at first I attributed it to my great skills as a nutrition educator, and then realized that no, they were just as average as ever. It's the medicine. However, when you put good nutrition advice together with a GLP-1 medication, people get fabulous results.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the tidbits you gave me not too long ago really was, okay, get off the creamy dressings. Don't do that. Go the balsamic route. And the more you learn, the more you change, and the more your brain says, yeah, that's good for you. Suddenly you realize, I really don't want that creamy dressing.
Right.
I'll gravitate the other way. So what do you say to people? It's very common and it's understandable. People don't know if you've never had a weight problem, you've never experienced prediabetes or diabetes, you've never thought, about these kind of things at all. You might say, well, just tell them to eat less. Just go for a walk. Just don't eat so much. And what do you say to people like that? Because this is a game changer, because actually people can start eating less and wanting to go for a walk because of what it's doing up here.
So if I can give you a chemical that changes your mind, then why have we not understood that it's probably chemicals that made you think the other thing in the first place? So the largest endocrine gland, so the largest hormone secreting gland in the human body, is the total accumulation of fat cells. Now think about that for a second. The fat cells themselves are secreting peptides and hormones into our bloodstream that tell our brain, you need to eat more. So we were already experiencing a hormone response. Our brain was being told, you're starving, you need to eat something. And now we're flipping that around. We're giving basically the anti-peptide that says, no, you're fine. You're not starving. You don't need to eat right now. And we're learning that it's not just simply baseline education or how you were raised or what your willpower is, things like that. It's actual chemical, and I don't want to say chemical imbalance because that's way too oversimplified, but basically the urges and impulses that we have are all at some level chemically mediated, whether we know what that chemical is or not. And yes, there is, we all have free will and we get to decide. I tell people all the time, okay, so you wake up hungry for cereal. You don't have to eat cereal. You can still grab an apple. You still get to decide. You still get to exercise your executive function.
Well, it's one of the things that this does. I mean, to simplify it in that way, you want Lucky Charms, but an apple's better for you. Mm-hmm. After a period of time on a GLP-1 med, my experience is, a lot of people I know, their experience is, you actually start wanting the apple, and the Lucky Charms kind of makes you a little crazy, and you don't want to eat that. That speaks to exactly what you're talking about. That's got to be a chemical thing going on in my mind.
It is, absolutely. It also is a clue into one of the big areas of research with GLP-1s now, which is in addiction medicine. And people who are alcoholics, opioid addicts, they've all noticed that as they get on GLP-1s to treat their diabetes, suddenly their desire to drink goes away.
I was going to ask you about that. I don't know if I heard you say this. I don't know if I heard Cynthia at your office say this. I don't know if I read this, but it's floating around in my brain somewhere, so I'm going to try it out. You tell me what you think. That there will be a time where the GLP-1s are thought of as a drug we take to change the way we think more than they're thought about anything else. Is that in a ballpark of probability or possibility?
So in the studies that I'm reading and in the writing about the studies that I'm reading, this is exactly what people are saying. The addiction specialists are very interested in how this changes the centers for desire in our head. And we've always used medicines to change neurotransmitters for brain function, for helping people give relief from what we typically call mental health problems. And now we're realizing that hormones, and that's what peptides are, is a type of hormone in our body, that hormones play a huge role in how our brain functions and how we experience the inner environment of ourselves.
Yeah, the inner environment of ourselves or self-talk or the voice inside my head is different, and it's significantly different. Now, I realize that not everybody is going to react the same, and there are people who just still, even with changes, when the GLP-1s that we have that seem to be a little easier on the stomach, so to speak, but there are still people who have a reaction and they just can't take that shot. I fortunately have not had that experience. What can somebody do if they've tried a GLP-1 and it just makes them feel sick? Is there another angle that they can take? Could they come see you talk about it? And is there a pathway maybe out there for them? Because it's depressing if you can't take it and everybody else is having great success.
There's almost always a way forward for everybody. Sometimes we just have to cut the doses down even smaller. They have come out with GLP-1s in pill form now, and in the future, as the GLP-1 medicines stop being brand name and there's generic available and there's more compounding available for more affordable, there's going to be more and more options for people. So even when, as I'm working with someone, they say, I just can't afford that option, then we work even harder on the nutrition point of view and let them know that someday there will be an option for you.
Well, in fact, I know you have a lot of patients and you probably won't recall, so I'll refresh your memory on it. You said to me, you said, hey, I want you to get on Zepbound. I'd never even heard of it because you said it's essentially the same as what you had great success with in that area. It was Mounjaro, but the Zepbound is available to people that don't have diabetes, and that was me. And I guess what I'm saying is that was a whole new avenue that I didn't realize existed, and that's just such a benefit for me because whatever, I don't know whether you call it compounds or whether you call it, I don't know, but whatever's inside that injection is a game changer for me.
It is a game changer. So let me try to clear up some confusion. So first of all,
I'm confused.
No, you're not confused.
No, I am.
The category is very confusing. So let's just talk about Ozempic as a GLP-1. Mounjaro is actually the next generation already, and it's a GLP-1 and a GIP. And I'm not going to go into all of those terms. You can look them up if you want to. But Mounjaro is actually an Ozempic plus, so to speak.
So it's like a Twix, 2 in 1.
Correct.
Okay.
And now Ozempic is indicated by the FDA to treat type 2 diabetes. Wegovy is the exact same molecule as Ozempic, but its FDA indication is to treat obesity. So Ozempic and Wegovy are actually the same molecule. Mounjaro and Zepbound are the same molecule for the same reason. And there are a couple of other obesity-related illnesses, so sleep apnea and fatty liver, that both have indications for treatment with GLP-1 medication.
So I think
and there's more coming.
There'll be more in the long-term future or
So
more short horizon?
Relatively short horizon.
Good.
I won't go into it because they're not finalized yet, but there are multiple other conditions that are related to the metabolic problems with diabetes or related to the weight problems with obesity that these medicines are going to get indicated for.
So as a doctor, you get all this inside information. As a non-doctor, I spent way too much time reading Mad Magazine. I should have gone more highbrowed, and I'd have access to the real good stuff. So if you can predict, and you may not be comfortable predicting, but would you say that looking at 10 years from now, we will have seen 10 years worth of evolution or change like we have in the last decade?
Yes.
And what's coming out just more available? Because I think that people would appreciate a less expensive option, something that they can qualify for, that because not everybody has prediabetes or diabetes. They really would like to try one. So all of that's going to be available?
Yes, because these medicines are, even now, they're following the same type of trajectory that any new medicine has. Back in the 2000s, that was the heyday of the statin medications. And regardless of how you feel about the statins, they are now all generic. They are all very inexpensive, all very easy to obtain, and they're not, they're not as good for as many things as Ozempic is. But by the time all the patents expire on Ozempic and it's readily available, the price will come down and it'll be available for more people. I don't know if you knew this, but the BMI for America as a whole has already come down.
Wow. That's pretty quick.
It's been within a couple of years of extensive use.
I did not know that.
As a group, we have all already lost enough weight to make a difference in the statistics.
Amazing. So one more GLP-1 kind of question. Then I want to ask you a couple that aren't necessarily related as we move toward conclusion. But somebody wants to try one. What side effects should they be concerned about, and what would you tell them? If they come to your office and say, hey, I'd like to try this, how do you know it's going to work for them? That's probably an unfair question. What are the factors you look for, whether or not you think it would be a good fit for them to try? And then what are the side effects they should be concerned about?
So I consider anyone with type 2 diabetes to be a good candidate to at least consider a GLP-1. It's a game changer for all of the metabolic problems that diabetes is contributing to. Absolute game changer. That doesn't mean I put everybody on one, but we consider it. The main side effect that people get is nausea, abdominal pain, indigestion. Sometimes people get vomiting. And we coach people through that. If there's someone who's highly likely, just by history to get nausea, I usually give them some medication to treat nausea and start them we'll start everybody at a low dose. And then we just kind of slowly work our way up, paying attention to the A1C, which is a measure of diabetes, or their weight for the effectiveness. I don't push everybody to the maximum dose. I work with the dosage till we get the desired effect, and everybody's different. The number one thing that you really have to screen out is very rare, but it's certain types of thyroid cancer, rare familial thyroid cancer. Not just my mother took thyroid medicine, and not even just, I had my thyroid removed for thyroid cancer. It's a particular kind. The last endocrinologist that I heard on this subject, she's got a large practice here in Texas. In her entire practice, she only has 2 people with this type of cancer. And I say that to say that definitely pay attention, but it's not a huge risk.
So you are Dr. Tim Martin. Do people think you invented the Doc Martin line of shoes and sandals? I've always wanted to ask you that.
Oh, I get that question a lot.
Do you wear them?
I do wear them.
You get a discount?
I wish. Now, they are spelled differently.
That's true. With an E.
They are with an E. When I graduated from medical school, my brother gave me my first pair of Doc Martens, and I've enjoyed wearing them ever since.
Yeah, well, it's just an unpaid bonus for Doc Martens, but yeah, good shoes. And then I wanted to just end here. A lot of times we'll ask our guests, what do they wish for Abilene for the next 10 or 15 years? And that we certainly could ask you that, be a fair question, and I'd like to know your answer. But even more importantly, what I'd like to ask is, you see a lot of people, you hear a lot of stories about stress, about anxiety. With everything going on in our world today, and particularly in culture in America at large, in the divisiveness, the vitriol, the encroaching social media bombardment that people seem to sometimes understand they are under, but still willingly participate, like that bowl of Lucky Charms or the Twix I mentioned. It's not always good for you. I guess I'm rambling now, but what are you seeing, and what advice do you have for people? What's going on in our world, and how can people cope?
I actually talk with people about this almost every day. I had a patient this morning that we addressed this very issue. So neurocognitive scientists tell us that the human brain will believe whatever you tell it. So what you expose yourself to matters more than anything else. And our constant consumption of media. And I would have said unfiltered media, but actually it's way more insidious than that. It's highly filtered media that is designed to impact you. And the people that do this know you and your habits better than you know yourself. And their technological filters are designed to catch your eye. And you're the only person who can look away and say no. And they tell us things that are patently false. And you might even know in your heart that it's not true. And yet you walk right into it every time. So whatever, the other thing I would say is what's going on politically is just the reflection off the surface. It's not even the surface. And what's actually happening with no implication of any kind of conspiracy, it's much deeper, and we have no idea what's actually happening. Even a lot of the people involved, the left hand doesn't know that's just the way it is. When we think we know, and when we take a strong position on what we think we know, we're setting ourselves up in opposition to our friend and the people that we share our environment with, our city, our schools, our workplaces. And instead of just paying attention to what we actually know, like the reality of the person sitting across from us. I saw a recommendation. It's the first time I've ever actually seen this, and I appreciated it so much. And it was talking about a way of lowering the stress, and it was doing what you and I are doing right now, looking at each other. Like, look at a person and look into their eyes and just see what happens. Because the human brains have something called mirror neurons. And when you share a gaze with another person, you can begin to get a sense of what's going on with them, their mood. And no one's ever explained to me really how it happens, but it does. But you don't get that out of a screen, and you don't get that out of your cell phone or, all the other ways we consume with our eyes. So in the same way you don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and go eat those Lucky Charms, you also don't want to be consuming with your eyes things that really aren't meant to be consumed.
Dr. Tim Martin, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate you coming. You're a busy guy to take time to come over here. Really appreciate it. And we appreciate you being here with us with another very interesting person from Abilene, a doctor with an interesting perspective and really a lot of good advice, especially that last part. Get off those screens. But the GLP-1, I can say, thanks to Dr. Tim Martin and others who had influence on me, for me, it's been a real blessing. Maybe it can be for you as well. I want to give a big shout out to our producer, Travis Corrigan. We call him TC, but really he's TCB, taking care of business over there on the switcher board and making it all happen so that you can enjoy the podcast. Again, we'll be back. I don't know why I say again, but we will be back again for another episode very soon. So stay tuned and watch all of the episodes and download the KTAB Plus app on your smart TV, where Abilene People and all the original content being made here at KRBC, KTAB, BigCountryHomepage.com, and Telemundo is becoming available on your TV. So you can watch this episode on the big screen. How about that, Doctor?
That's excellent.
Dr. Martin, you'll be in HD big screen. It is excellent. It is excellent. And excellent that you were with us today. Thanks so much. I'm your host, Danny Sims, and we will see you next time.